Okay, well, this is no doubt a very pertinent topic. Go back to the beginning here. All right, well, I think it's pretty clear that most of us are pretty well aware of the fact that people act like other people matter. I mean, for the most part, that people tend to live their lives as if people really do have dignity and value. So it's not something that is a stretch to say that if you look around the world, obviously, now some people don't treat people like they matter. I know that. I'm aware of that. Some people treat people pretty horrifically in some cases. So I'm well aware of that too. But the point is that overall, I think that we see a lot of people that act like people really do matter. Okay. And we treat people that way, and we want others to be treated that way generally. Now, as believers in God and in the Messiah, then that, of course, gets heightened to a new level. But, this is obviously a topic that does impact all of us. And, is my favorite shirt that I want to get, I still need to get this printed up, is, why does anyone matter? I think of this girl that came up to me on the college campus we were at, and she asked me if I supported this specific social cause, and she was an atheist, and I looked at her and said, well, why does anyone matter? On your worldview, why does anyone matter at all? So she kind of looked at me and said, that's a good question. There's obviously, it comes to ethical issues and moral disagreements, it's pretty clear that many people fight over these issues because we're concerned that people are not being treated the right way. It seems that most people fight for certain ethical issues or ethical causes or moral causes is because they think some people groups being mistreated, or some people group is not being treated equally. There's a lack of equality or rights, or something is being trampled upon, or something is not right. So I think that's that's an issue of common ground we have with a lot of people. But even though most people say that people matter, we have the conviction that people matter, there's still a lot of disagreement over contemporary ethical issues. I mean, you can just tell by looking at some of these issues. I mean, these things are debated nonstop all over our culture. We debate the sanctity of life, which can not only be about abortion or a pro-life issue, it can carry over into euthanasia, cloning, stem cell research, and then we have issues over immigration today, the way that should be treated, whether people are be treated fairly, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. And we know that's a royal mess right now if you've watched the news. And then, of course, we have the issue with the same-sex relations issue. We have the transgenderism issue, with the sex reassignment surgery, whether that's good for people. Is that really going to help somebody? Is it really promoting the flourishing of humans by doing that? Human trafficking, sexual exploitation, and violence. Obviously, that's a huge ethical issue. And of course, racial discrimination's an ongoing debate, that goes on and on. A lot of these debates just carry on and on. And so there's no doubt it shows that people really care about the way people are treated. Otherwise, you wouldn't spend so much time investing in these debates and investing time and money and perhaps prayer and whatever it is. These things that go on and on. These debates are still ongoing in the political arena and the personal conversations and social circles. So, just look at a couple issues, like when you had when physician-assisted suicide was first legalized in the United States. You had an Oregon law that legalized was called the Death with Dignity Act. And basically what that view is that people have dignity, and therefore they ought to have the legal option of physician-assisted suicide or death. So that's part of honoring someone's dignity, to give them the option to end their life. And then at the same time, you had people totally disagreed with that. saying that that would violate human dignity. So it went both ways, people debating over the ethics of that issue, but obviously has to do with the dignity of humans. You also had the World Health Organization, not that you can really trust them on a lot of stuff, but they said that reproductive cloning is contrary to human dignity. And then you had others that say that we should be able to practice reproductive cloning because that's fully consistent with human dignity. This is an important way for people to conceive children. So others disagreed. So you see these disagreements over the way humans should be treated. These are really good books if you want to go deeper on this issue. 3 of them that probably would help you if you want to get any of these 3. Definitely all of them are good, but personally, I think that these are all good starting points. Now, one thing for sure is that we reflect the issue of, we can show that we really think people matter in every election, because some cases we vote for specific people that pass certain policies that we think will help a specific people group, right? You may, obviously you look at the candidates and their platforms. I mean, hopefully you do. Some people don't. They just look at personalities and they may say, oh, this person's really sharp and eloquent and charismatic, so I'll vote for them. But you always want to look at the platform when you vote. It's very helpful. Okay, that's just good common sense. But the point is that you look for policies that generally you think are going to help humans flourish and help humans honor them and give them the dignity they deserve, right? Or you can just look at what their platform is. And then sometimes we pick careers we think that'll help a certain people group or help people in general. We obviously don't want to see people abused or mistreated because we think people have dignity and value. Or you ask the average person on the street, if you said, what's your purpose in life? And many of them will say, well, I want to help people. I want to make this world a better place. See? So our whole lives are geared towards our view of people. And it's pretty clear that many people assume people really do matter, even if they can't explain why. But it's pretty just observation alone shows that most people think that people do have dignity and value. And then that's why we also get upset, or we might look at something, our moral intuitions or our conscience just bothers us when we see humans mistreated, such as a genocide, right? We might yell out, that is not the way humans are supposed to be treated. That's evil, that's wrong, it's morally wrong. 9/11, our moral intuitions were off the charts, right? The moral law within us that God has given us was absolutely violated because we know that this is just morally wrong what's happening to these humans, right? Just obviously, it's common sense. It's automatic. Intuitive knowledge is automatic. Or, back when we had there's so many other examples, but, the Vegas shooting from, I think, 4 years back, that really upset people, obviously, innocent victims. So we're outraged at these things because, they're injustices, right? And so because we think people are being mistreated. And we, as I said, we sometimes fight for the world to be a better place. We fight for reconciliation. We fight for racial reconciliation, people fight for transgender rights, gay rights, equality, the list goes on, because it's their specific view of people and the way they want to be treated. You guys may remember a ways back when Harvey Weinstein was accused of sexual harassment. He was the big Hollywood guy, and dozens of movie stars came forward to condemn what had happened. I mean, all these stars came out and said his behavior was disgusting and wrong. And once again, it's obvious that people just get really upset with the way other people are treated. I mean, that's because we think people have dignity and value, right? We think they matter. And as I said, just to kind of reiterate, this plays a huge role in how we view hate speech, things like genetic engineering, prostitution, the issue of drug use, how to stop that, shooting down hijacked aircrafts, protection against self-incrimination, life imprisonment, the use of lie detectors, hunger strikes. The list goes on and on. There's so many examples. So this topic is always at the forefront. Now, when you decide that, when your moral system, or ethical system, which everybody has these three components of their moral ethical system. Generally, everybody has moral values. Those are the things that motivate our behavior, things such as love and justice and mercy. Sorry, I repeated justice there twice. Love, mercy, justice. Those are moral values. And then, of course, those things impact our moral duties. Our moral duties are the actions, the things that we do, our oughtness in us to say, I shouldn't treat a person like that. I shouldn't do this, or I ought to do that. Those are duties, right? They're obligations. And then, of course, moral accountability matters, because obviously if we look at these tragedies and these things, the way people are treated, and we want accountability. When 9/11 happened, most of us said those people need to be held accountable for that caused this horrific thing, right? We want to see them held accountable. That's just part of our moral intuitions, and it's part of everybody's moral system or ethical system. Now, it's interesting that human dignity is universally recognized in most countries in their charters of what they've come up with about human rights. Like, example, United Nations, when they issued that Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, they said all human beings are born equal in dignity. Or you had, in 1966, you had this plus two other documents, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights became known as the International Bill of Rights. And all three of these documents, of course, said that human rights have their grounding, the dignity of all human beings. And then we have the African Charter on Human and People's Rights by the Organization of African Unity, calls the dignity an essential objective for the achievement of legitimate aspirations of the African people. You have the Arab Charter on Human Rights by the League of Arab States, acknowledges both the belief in human dignity and the right to a life of dignity. We had South Africa's Constitution that says everyone has inherent dignity and the right to have their dignity respected and protected. The dignity of humanity shall be inviolable. And then you had the Supreme Court of Canada, and the Israeli Supreme Court affirmed human dignity to be a constitutionally grounded fundamental value. And then when Obama got his Nobel Peace Prize, he said only a just peace based on the inherent rights and dignity of every individual can truly be lasting. So,
hey, Eric.
Yes.
You're having a slideshow issue again, I think. Your slides are not changing.
Oh, they're not?
It's been brought up in chat, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Huh. Okay. Hold on here. What, did you see any of them? Did anybody see any of them at all?
Just the first one.
Just the first one.
Just the first one?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a minute. My apologies. Oh, I think I know what happened. Wait a minute. Can you see it now? Can you guys see it now?
Yes. I can't.
Okay. I need you to put in the chat room. I can't hear anybody. You got to chat it. Can everyone see it?
I can see it.
I don't know why I'm not hearing you guys very loud. I don't know if you're, just a second. Sorry. Just give me a second here. Oh, here we go. Hold on. Okay. Can everyone see him? Just a second. All right. Everyone can see these?
Yes, I can see them now.
Okay. Anyone else having problems? Speak up now.
It's not full screen, but I don't think it matters. I mean,
no, I'm going to make it full screen. I just want to make sure you can see it. You can see this at least, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I had the wrong slide set up. Just a second. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm
Definition
sorry.
of Human dignity.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was saying was that all these countries have all these things in place that in their charters, that recognize human dignity. South Africa's constitution says here that everyone has inherent dignity and the right to have their dignity respected and protected. The Supreme Court of Canada and Israeli Supreme Court affirm human dignity be constitutionally grounded fundamental value. And then I said that Obama said back when he got his Nobel Peace Prize, only a just peace based upon inherent rights and dignity of every individual can be truly lasting. So, where does all this emphasis on human dignity come from? I mean, it's just all throughout, all these charters. Like I mentioned, the African Charter of Human People's Rights, saying the essential objective for the achievement of legitimate aspirations of African people. I had the Arab Charter on Human Rights by the League of Arab States, saying that both a belief in human dignity and a right to life of human dignity. And then I had some other ones I mentioned, you guys didn't see them in the slides. United Nations, of course, issued a Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, which says all human beings are born equal in dignity. And there are some other ones there. So, there's all kinds of examples. So, where does all this emphasis on human dignity come from? These countries, are they just taking it for granted? Or are they just, where are they getting the foundation for this? And so, it's interesting that the things that you could find common ground on are questions, with other people, like why do you care so much about the rights and equality of humans? Okay, now Paula says she's still stuck on the first slide. I'm totally confused. Is everyone seeing this slide right now? The common ground slide, is everybody seeing this?
Yes,
Yeah.
my,
I see it as well.
Yes, I
Okay,
see it.
I don't know what
Yep.
the problem is then. If some of you are having problems still, I don't know what it is. I can't fix it because I don't know. But everybody else is seeing it. So, Paula, I'm not sure what the problem is. I'm sorry, I don't. But I put up a different slide set, so it shouldn't be a problem anymore. I'll check out, then let me in. Okay, gotcha. Sounds good. Okay, now it's okay. Very good. Okay, so where does the idea of the idea of human value, equality, rights, justice, where all these things come from, which we seem to take for granted? Where are these things grounded in? And you can obviously find common ground with people. Everybody around you probably cares about these issues. The question is, where do they come from? So, on a biblical worldview, I think we probably know this, but just to reiterate, but in a biblical worldview, of course, we believe that all human beings enjoy the right to life, the resources to sustain it, and life is a gift from God. We have a right to human dignity, the right to receive respect, irrespective of age, gender, ethnicity, rank, or any other way. Those things don't determine our dignity. And of course, we have responsibility to secure and protect and establish the rights of others. So that is the biblical foundation of things. And then, of course, we probably know that in the Declaration of Independence, which you actually don't need the Bible for, actually, you could ground that in natural law theory, which is based on things that are just common sense in the world of nature, like they're just embedded in the natural world. They're part of the features of reality of the natural world. So you wouldn't necessarily need a God to know this, but you can use the Bible. I'm just saying that this is based more on natural law when they made this document. But it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Of course, all men are created equal, and they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, some people will argue and say, women have rights, everyone's equal. Of course, as I said, many people fight for these certain causes because of rights, issue of rights and dignity and things like that. But, when it comes to rights, if you think about it, where do rights come from? Okay, where do human rights come from? A right is a really a privilege that belongs to a person, and you can only get that from one of three places: by law, nature, custom. Okay, and they have to come from an outside source. Okay, they're obviously only valid if the outside source is valid. So, when someone says to me that rights come from laws, the laws are a basis for our rights. No, that is actually not true. Okay, human laws can only recognize God-given rights. Okay, because if human laws were the only basis for our rights, if the laws go away or they get ousted or something, then you have no more rights, right? What if a dictator gets in charge of your government and takes away these laws that are basis for your rights, which does happen in some countries, right? So human rights cannot be grounded in simply governmental laws, okay? If that's the case, then we're all in big trouble, right? As I said, human laws only recognize God-given rights. So human rights are something that are grounded in God, okay? And they transcend all culture, all places, all time, all people groups. But in our country, of course, we have the Constitution, and these things are self-evident, okay, that we have these rights. Now, that's why when people fight for rights, like when you get in these debates, like, well, we don't have rights and we need to pass a law that gives us these rights. Well, you can do that, but it doesn't mean you have any justification for those rights, because if that gets taken away or gets, abolished, then you're in big trouble, right? So what we're saying is that God as a transcendent source, is the one that grounds humans as having equality, dignity, and intrinsic value. Notice I said intrinsic. That's not extrinsic, right? And value is not based simply, humans aren't valuable just because they're useful or productive. It's not based on what they can do and can't do, because if that's the case, then some people don't have any value, because some people can't contribute some of the same things that other people contribute to society. Some people have mental limitations. Some people have physical limitations. Some people may have other limitations, right? So we don't look at people as they matter just based on what they can do. What is 90% of your conversations at dinner when you meet someone for the first time, having lunch, dinner, meeting? What do you do? What do you do, Eric? What do you do, John? What do you do, Cedric? What do you do, Mike? What do you do, Steve? See, we always tend to kind of measure people that way. It's kind of like we're checking them out. What do you do? Oh, you do that. Wow, you're really important. Yeah, wow. You're really contributing something there. You are really valuable, right? And that's what we do with people. That's just, humans are wired that way, and that's the way we treat people sometimes. But that's not really where we draw dignity and value from. Okay, I mean, that's not going to ground it. Not going to be the grounding point. Okay, because your job can go away, your career can go away, you can lose the ability to do your job. Obviously, that can shift within a matter of 2 days or even 24 hours, right? Now, of course, I talked about this in the clip from a couple months ago. I talked about being created in the image and likeness of God. I said that, the Bible obviously says that all humans are made in God's image and likeness. Now, we went into deeper detail on that. You can go watch it on YouTube because the clip is there. If you subscribe to my channel under Eric Chabot, every time I put up a clip, it'll go right to your email. See, it's that easy. Just hit subscribe. Anyway, on the YouTube channel. You know how much that means to me. It's so important to me. But you have these Genesis passages, of course, for people are made in God's image and likeness. We talked about what that means in the other clip. I don't have time to go into that now, but we talked about some of these passages about we're created in the image and likeness of God. There's a couple of them a few of them in Genesis. And of course, the value of humans from a biblical perspective, but there's certainly many passages that talk about that. But the point is that when we say humans have dignity, from our perspective, from a biblical perspective, dignity doesn't vary according to circumstances. Okay, we receive dignity based on God endowing that upon us just as his creations. Okay, it's not something that changes, it's not shifting. It's not based on whether you lose your job or whether you lose a physical ability to do something or something happens. People receive dignity as a gift of the grace of God. Okay, we all humans have dignity. And having, capacities and relationships and functions, yes, those flow normally from being created in God's image. That's just the outworking of that, but it's not what defines it. Okay, because obviously if people lack any of those things, they're not any less created in God's image, right? Everyone's created in God's image, whether what you can do or can't do based on your relationships or your functions, right? So because, let's face it, we all know people that have all kinds of capabilities that we don't have, people that can do things that we can't do, people that can't do what we can do, people that are just different. I mean, everybody's different and everybody has certain giftings and certain abilities, and that's not really the thing that makes us that really defines our dignity. Okay, now so let's just remember that we're offering that alternative, that our view, the people matter. Of course, all people matter is based on our view of people being created in the image and likeness of God. That's just the grounding point for everything for us. But let's look at a few options out here that maybe could try to do this. Now, of course, many people who go through the college experience and of course out there in culture might hold to some form of evolutionary naturalism, which it boils down to these two questions. Do we have intrinsic value, dignity, and rights because we bear the image of a personal God, or are we just an accident of nature and ultimately only the higher form of an animal, and the highest authority we have access to is each other, and the only source for truth we have is science? That's what some people believe on the bottom part there, right? I run into that on campuses for sure. I actually will say to students right to their face, are you an accident of nature? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'll say, well, do you believe that you were intentionally created? Like it's a result of intent? Because the opposite of accident is intention, right? If I accidentally knock this water ball over and spills over my computer, that was an accident. Now, if I hit it with my hand, that's intentional, right? So I ask them that point blank, are you an accident of nature? I make some of them just bite the bullet right there. They'll say yes or no. Give me a yes or no. Are you creating the image and likeness of God, or are you just an accident of nature? So in an evolutionary naturalistic view with no God, humans, of course, are the result of a blind and purposeless evolutionary process. If you look at the American Humanist Association, they say the humans are an integral part of nature and we are the result of unguided evolutionary change. So the natural material world is self-existing. There's nothing outside of it, no supernatural, no immaterial things. Everything's just physical. You're just a big glob of meat. You're just matter in motion or a moist robot. So what they believe is that our value is grounded in an evolutionary framework, just as based on us adapting to our environment, survival of the fittest. And of course, we try to rise to the top of the evolutionary ladder. There's no transcendent source for human dignity or value. And of course, anyone that says we can base it in God, or that our dignity and value is based on God, is just a fiction, right? It's a creation of humans. It's not real. And of course, human dignity just changes with culture. Culture is fluid, it shifts, and we shift with it. And it's very similar to what we call postmodern individualism and subjectivism, which is kind of like saying, like, hey, Eric, you have value. I think you're valuable. But maybe I turn around and say, well, Steve, you don't have value. It's based on my subjective opinion. That's what it kind of boils down to. It gets down to that area because there's no objective transcendent source, right, to ground any of that stuff. So this is a really uplifting quote. I think I've showed this before. William Provine, who passed away a ways back, he was an evolutionary biologist, but he said that, let me summarize my views on what modern evolutionary biology tells us loud and clear. And these are basically Darwin's views. There are no gods, no purposes, and no goal-directed forces of any kind. There's no life after death, and when I die, I'm absolutely certain that I'm going to be dead. That's the end of me. There's no ultimate foundation for ethics, no ultimate meaning in life, and no free will for humans either. What an unintelligible idea. And then we have the late great Stephen Hawking, who passed away 4 or 5 years ago. He said the human race is just a chemical scum on a moderate-sized planet orbiting around a very average star in the outer suburb of one among many 100 billion galaxies. We are so insignificant, I can't believe the whole universe exists for our benefit. That would be like saying that you would disappear if I closed my eyes. So that's really uplifting, right? But this is just very kind of naturalistic, atheistic views of humanity. And this author here, when he wrote a book called The Nature of Dignity, this is what he said: human beings cannot be deserving of any special measure of respect by virtue of their having been created in God's image when they have not been created at all, and there is no God. Thus, the traditional conception of human dignity is also undermined in the wake of Darwin. Jeffrey Dahmer, when you found out he was a cannibal, right? He was heavily exposed to naturalistic evolution, and his father said that Jeffrey had been exposed to this view, kind of a naturalistic evolutionary view, and his father said about his son's thinking process, as far as what he did, he said, if all that happens naturalistically, what's the need for God? Can I set my own rules? Who owns me? I own myself. Now, please hear what I'm saying. I'm not saying that everybody believes that, like that if you're some sort of naturalistic evolutionary believer and that's your worldview, I'm not saying everybody goes out and does what Jeffrey Dahmer does. Of course not, that you turn into a cannibal. I'm just saying that it's interesting, that worldview, you see the implications of it, and what happened there. Now, that's obviously a rare occurrence. It doesn't happen, and every single person believes that. I'm just saying that was kind of interesting. All right, so there's a guy named Peter Singer. I don't know if you've heard of him. He is a well-known ethicist at Princeton of bioethics. He's a big believer in an evolutionary naturalistic view. Not obviously does not believe in God. He actually distinguishes between human and persons, right? And he actually thinks humans only matter based on their function. Okay, they have to have the ability to make choices. People have to have the ability to make choices and act on them. They have to be self-aware. They have to have the ability to experience pleasure and pain. They have to have a desire to keep living. And that's why he doesn't view kids in the womb as being people. He doesn't view them as having value. So, he tends to view that other species, he doesn't like the view. He views humans as just the same as apes and dolphins, okay? That, apes and dolphins can be just subject to greater moral protection than a human fetus or infant, which lacks the traits such as what he mentioned above, because he thinks the human fetus or infant doesn't have the capacity to see oneself as a continuing subject. It doesn't have a desire to keep living. They don't know anything yet, so they can't really express that desire. They don't have the capability to make choices yet, and they're not self-aware, and they can't experience pleasure and pain. Of course, that's ridiculous. And so he thinks abortion and infanticide are permissible. Yeah, that means that you can still kill an infant after it's born out of the womb. If they're maybe have some sort of disability, or there's something wrong with them that's going to cause a big heartache to the family, you should have the right to terminate that child. I know you're thinking, yuck. And sometimes what this leads to, this evolutionary naturalism, be with no God in the picture, like let's take God out. It kind of pushes humans, this movement towards transhumanism. And this is gaining steam. Okay, and I'm going to show you a clip in a second here. But this is the view that humans, that we can transform and transcend what we are now. We can transcend previous limitations, and we can basically, through technology, exceed way beyond what we are now. And basically, these movies, of course, you've seen these, well, maybe you've seen these movies, but some of these movies have talked about this, or that's been the plot. where humans exceed what they are now and have these these abilities and these special functions that transcend anything they are now. They upgrade humans into this, through technology, into this greater human, right? Into an ability to do things they never could do before. And they transcend what they are now. Now, there are a few, the one admirable thing about transhumanism, which is gaining some ground, is that they may want to try, they're trying to improve quality of life and reduce suffering, but if you look at a lot of transhumanism, some of it's really the quest for immortality. It's an escape from death, trying to escape death through technology, of course, escape from all moral boundaries. And of course, there's nothing sacred or special in it, because they're viewing humans as just biological machines. And not to mention we're malfunctioning, so we need to be upgraded. And we can be modified and improved. So it's all about technology. Technology is God in transhumanism. Technology and science are the God. Now, this guy right here, I don't know if you've seen him, but I'm going to show you a clip of him. And give me a second here as I pull this up. He is a Jewish atheist. And pull this up here. I have to share the screen. Hold on one second here. I don't know if you're going to be able to hear this. Let's see if I can. Last time I had a hard time getting it. There we go. I put share sound. So this guy, listen to this guy. This is wild.
Probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens. Because in the coming generations, we will learn how to engineer bodies and brains and minds. Now, how exactly will the future masters of the planet look like? This will be decided by the people who own the data. Now, why is data so important? It's important because we've reached the point when we can hack not just computers, we can hack human beings and other organisms. Now, what do you need in order to hack a human being? You need two things. You need a lot of computing power, and you need a lot of data, especially biometric data. But control of data might enable human elites to do something even more radical than just build digital dictatorships. By hacking organisms, elites may gain the power to re-engineer the future of life itself. Because once you can hack something, you can usually also engineer it. All of life, for 4 billion years, dinosaurs, amoebas, tomatoes, humans, all of life was subject to the laws of natural selection and to the laws of organic biochemistry. But this is now about to change. Science is replacing evolution by natural selection with evolution by intelligent design. Not the intelligent design of some god above the clouds, but our intelligent design and the intelligent design of our clouds, the IBM cloud, the Microsoft cloud. These are the new driving forces of evolution. And at the same time, science may enable life, after being confined for 4 billion years to the limited realm of organic compounds, science may enable life to break out into the inner...
I'll let you watch the rest of the clip another time, but that's pretty wild. And he is...
have this soul or spirit, and they have
Jewish
free will,
atheist,
and nobody knows what's happening inside me.
Big time
so whatever I choose, whether
wizard,
in the election
big science
or whether
guy,
in the supermarket,
evolutionary
this is my free will.
guy, big in naturalistic evolution. But You know, it's very interesting to see what he's talking about, how humans, we
Today,
can
we
be
have
the
the
intelligent
technology to
designers.
hack
We don't need
human
God. You
beings
know,
on a massive scale.
we're smart
Yeah, I
enough
mean,
and
everything
capable
is being
enough, and of course
digitalized.
technology is
Everything
going
is being
to
monitored.
take
In
us
this
to
time
where
of
we need
The
to
crisis,
Rari
be.
you
is
have
still
to follow
speaking,
science.
Eric.
It's often said that you
Rari
should
is
never
still
allow
Oh, is
a
he?
good crisis to go.
Sorry. Jeez. Oh, you're right. He is. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Let's fix that. There we go. He's gone. Yeah, you can see how the confidence in the technology and everything that they think they can do to reach this transhumanism. And there's a group of them that are into this. It's him and the Charles Schwab crowd and that whole crowd, you know, the big time, the super rich people who have all the money that think they can use their money to do this. So anyway, so technology is God, and it's pretty interesting indeed. So you can check him out more, but he's got a huge influence, this guy. Anyway, okay, so let's go forward. Now we can also, now some people, as I said, they think people are valuable because of just their productivity or usefulness, right? They think that if they can, you know, make a significant contribution to society, that's what makes them valuable. So someone, if they win a Nobel Peace Prize, then they obviously can be more significant and have greater value than a mentally handicapped or mentally impaired person, right? And so once again, that's kind of back to viewing people as only having great value if based on their function, okay? And unfortunately, that is a real problem, because in our biblical worldview, we believe that what makes us a human is our essence or our nature. It's not our function, okay? That God created us in his image, as I talked about dignity being endowed on us, and just because of our human nature alone, that's something that's fixed. It can't be changed. Okay, it's something that's not based on society or based on what we can't do or can do. Okay. Now, one thing that I want to mention is that going back to Singer's view, Peter Singer's view, the humans shouldn't be any different. Like he says that, Peter Singer, back to him, the ethicist guy, the atheist guy, if he says that he thinks saying humans are more made in God's image, have more value than complex animals, is comparable to sexism or racism. So he thinks any attempt to see humans as more significant than any part of the animal world is arrogant. And to say one species is more superior to the other one is ethically wrong, according to him. I don't know where he gets his pulls his ethics from to begin with, what his grounding point is for that as well. But just remember, the humans are different from animals. Okay, I know some people will say we're just a higher form of an animal, we're just like animals. Sometimes you hear that, but we have an inherent spiritual religious nature to us. Generally, animals don't. We can formulate arguments, we can do logic, we can come up with syllogisms, we can draw inferences, develop propositions. We can do a lot of things. We are different than animals, okay? And animals don't seem to ponder into the big why questions of life, the big metaphysical questions, okay? The big, why are we here? What's our purpose? Where does morality come from? What happens at death? Why do I have value? Why do I have dignity? What's wrong with the human race? Why does evil happen? They don't ask big questions, okay? Humans ask those questions, okay? So we are definitely significantly very different, okay, from animals. To say we're just basically just like another animal is just really reductionistic and, quite frankly, silly. But part of what we see in what Singer is going for is what most of our society is built on, which is a utilitarian ethic. Now, I don't know if you've heard of utilitarianism, but basically everything around you is based on this. All the decisions that get made, COVID policies are based on this as well. but it's an ethic that looks at basically what will bring the greatest good, the greatest happiness, the greatest well-being or flourishing for the greatest number of people. Okay, now you may say, well, that sounds right to me. But, if you ever saw the movie Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan, if you're an old 80s guy like I am, there was one line where Spock said, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, right? You have this coming out. If you want to see utilitarianism in action, we'll give you a few examples. So let's say that someone believes in physician-assisted suicide. So the end goal, the end result looks like the right thing, right? The end goal is that money is saved that will prevent somebody going into end-of-life care, right? Like my mom had end-of-life care last year. She was bedridden for a year. She could talk and everything. Obviously, she didn't lose her mind, but still she couldn't get up and walk normally. She couldn't do practically anything. She was just bedridden. So she didn't really have a quality of life the way, most people define quality. And so someone might come along and say, she should be able to end her life through suicide with a physician. And that would save you, Eric, and your family money, lots of money by taking care of her and going through this burden and, putting up with this and driving to assisted living centers and dealing with all her problems. And so some people what they do is they see the end result. They say, the end result is it's a greater good. And, you should just be able to she should be able to end her life with a physician, right? Then you have something like stem cell research where people could be helped by treatments developed by, research on stem cells. The outcome could be that infertile couples could get a healthy baby, right? That's the end result, right? And so we see utilitarian ethics only sees generally the end goal down here. Okay, they're not thinking about the process and all the consequences of that process. They just see the end goal. Okay. Another example of utilitarianism, when in the United States, many justified slavery on the grounds of the greater good, the economic benefit that was producing for our country. That sounds disgusting, but that's what happened. Or the Tuskegee experiments, which, they denied treatment to 399 poor black men in Alabama with syphilis, resulting in the early death of many and the infection of wives and babies. But they said there's a greater good, this medical benefit, right, that was coming out of that. Or some, Nazis thought that killing the Jews or exterminating the Jews were part of a greater good that benefited German society. So this is a really problematic view of humans, this utilitarian ethic that our societies are built on and decisions are made on. Just whatever's going to help the most people, whatever's going to be the end goal, just get to the ends justifies the means. There's problems with that because to assess the consequences of any action, you'd have to be able to see in the future. No one can see that far ahead except God, right? So we're trying to make these short-term decisions for the greatest good, but we can't really see in the future what the outworkings of that thing will be. Only God can, of course. And really, who gets to define what outcome is good? And who gets to define what a bad outcome is? Who defines that? Where's that come from? And, once again, you're back to why people matter anyway. Why are you even trying to do a greater good for any amount of people? Because you have to care about why people matter and why is that? And so what's problematic about this utilitarian ethic is they're not concerned about the process and how you get there. They're only interested in the end result. Okay. You can think of all kinds of examples where this has happened, but that's where Peter Singer's ethic is, right? And that's where a lot of people are at. Now, another view that makes humans valuable is kind of a view, or we think humans matter, is based on collectivism. And this is a view that you draw your identity from a collective group. Perhaps you're part of a specific people group, like a minority or an ethnic group or a certain demographic. And this is what gives you value and dignity, okay? Whether you say, well, you matter, people matter because this people group matters. This people group matters because they're this. This people group matters because they're this ethnicity or that ethnicity. And they find all their identity in that, and that's where they draw their value from, okay? Just like the collective whole. They're part of a collective whole group of people. And obviously, if you think about that, so we could say that you get some dignity and value from being a certain ethnicity. Obviously, God cares about ethnicity. He created ethnicities. There's nothing wrong with ethnicities. But is that really where we get our core identity from? Is that where we're going to get our core dignity from? Obviously, we know that people have mistreated people groups throughout history because they didn't think they had any value, right? So I would say our first view of value and dignity in humans should come from God, of course, being created in the image and likeness of God. Ethnicity would be up there, but it wouldn't be the first one. Okay, it would be underneath that, right? It'd be submitted to being a core image, being an image bearer of God. Obviously, there's no races in the Bible. There's one human race, but there's many ethnicities, right? God created beautiful ethnicities. But that's finding all your value in that can be kind of tricky. It's not that it's unimportant, but it can't be your core identity. And finding your core value in that thing, it has to be being an image bearer of God first, I think. And then there's, of course, like I talked about, postmodern individualism. And this is the view that humans have value or dignity based on personal preference, or it's just given to you through the government. Okay, so in this view, individuals create their own values, and you get to say who has value and who doesn't. It's based on your subjective opinion. Once again, like I said, if I say Steve has value, and then Mark comes along and says, no, he doesn't have value, and then John comes along and says, Eric, you don't have value, you don't matter, you don't have value, but Steve does and you don't, and then Mark does and you don't. I mean, it just turns into a subjective opinion kind of thing where each person decides who has value and who doesn't. But obviously that gets really problematic. So on that view, instead of God being the transcendent source, the individual is the source of everything. You have the right to set your own moral values, moral duties. You get to decide who has value, dignity, and rights. You get to set the standard for what the world should look like, and you get to set the standard for what personal happiness is. And so you can see where that leads to challenges, and that's why most people don't agree on a lot of things, is they don't have like a transcendent source to ground anything. It's based on their opinion. It gets highly subjective. So really what it boils down to is that, as the authors of this book say, only when human significance depends not on how great people are, on people's capacities, but on how great God is and on God's capacities, can human significance truly be substantial and secure. Only when human significance is alien, rooted not in ourselves, but in something or someone outside of ourselves, is human dignity inalienable, unlosable, and unshakable. Okay? And so in the end, then God is why people matter. Okay? So as I said back here, I think that we have a opportunity in this day and age to get in some really good conversations with people. If you want to get a talking point going the direction of the God question or what they believe about God or the gospel, you can always talk about why do people care so much about rights and the quality of others? Why do people think people matter? I mean, look at the Black Lives Matter movement. It's all based on saying a certain people group matter. Okay, but why do they matter? Why does any people group matter if God doesn't exist? Well, they just do. They just matter. We just know that. Well, how do you know that? We just do. People matter. Come on, it's common sense. Why? Oh, come on, because society says so. Well, which society? All societies say that? I mean, there's been a lot of societies that treat people really poorly, and they don't think some people matter. We know that through history. So it's like I said, I think I used an example when this girl came up to me on campus once and she asked me if I supported Black Lives Matter, and she said she was an atheist. I asked her in response, well, why does anyone matter? She just looked at me like point blank stare that I never thought about that. I said, well, that's something you got to think about, because you're spending a lot of time fighting for this people group and this cause, but you have no grounding point for it. She didn't get mad. She was just like, never thought about that. And so that is something we really should start thinking about. Instead of just jumping on a social cause, try to think about when someone jumps on a social cause, Why are you even on that cause to begin with? Why are you fighting for this people group? Why does it matter? Well, they have rights. Well, where do those come from? They have dignity. Where does that come from? Well, they have value. These people matter. Why? Well, they just do. Well, that's circular reasoning. You're not giving me any really reason why they matter. Well, we have to survive as humans. Okay, well, why do we need to survive? Well, what if we die out? Okay, well, that's what evolutionary naturalism believes, that this is about survival of the fittest, right? Okay, so, these are some things to think about and good talking points. I hope it's provoked some thought, especially when you vote next. Think about what policies that particular party is going to pass that really help humans. What are their policies about? What are they doing to promote human dignity, value, and rights? Like, what are their positions that they have on the ticket? Is sex reassignment surgery the huge part of their platform? We need to get people, if they're suffering from gender dysphoria at age 12, we need to get them changed right away. We need to get the girl's breast cut off or the guy's genitalia cut off and get them transitioned. I mean, that's a right they have, and that's good for them. I mean, is that really what the case is? Is that really good for them? Is that good for humans? Okay. All these things are big ethical debates, but they're all built on why people matter or why don't they matter. Okay. All right. Yes, and it is the Rosh Hashanah time, and I probably should have done a meeting on that, but I didn't because I'm a total dingbat, and I didn't do it, so forgive me. But anyway,